Now I know that this seems like a strange concept, but for those of you that absolutely love coloring in, then this is definitely something that you will enjoy. I have tons of adult coloring books, drawing pages, coloring in pages, all those kinds of things. And this is essentially the same thing, but for Cricut. Now the principles of this are all exactly the same as what you would have for normal Infusible ink projects. But with the Botanicals set, I find that you can't easily do things like words, because when you cut a word out of the Botanicals, it doesn't stand out as well on a t-shirt because it's black and white. But with this method, you'll be able to make it stand out really well and make it really incredible because you put so much love, effort, and work into it. And I'm going to show you exactly how we're going to do this. My name is Kelly, and let's get clacking. For those of you that may not know, Infusible ink is essentially pre-printed sublimation sheets. And Infusible ink and sublimation works the best on white polyester products. Because it is ink that seeps into the fibers of your t-shirt, you can't use it on black or dark substrates because you just quite simply won't see it. It's exactly the same principle as messing ink on a black top. You won't be able to see the ink if you messed it. It's the same thing. So I recommend 65% polyester and above, and white or very light colored fabrics. Light pink, yellow, light gray, those kinds of things. So we're going to treat this like a normal Infusible ink project. In Design Space, I'm going to use the Cricut logo for this one. So under Images, I'm going to type in Cricut, and I'm going to use just the plain logo. Now I want the word only, I don't want the circle. So I'm going to click on the contour feature in the bottom right hand corner, and it'll open up a pop-up. What we can do here is to remove elements of the design that we don't want. So I'm going to just click on the circle, or I can click on the circle on the right hand side. Now I'm going to click away from the screen and you can see how the design has changed. I'm going to make this quite a bit bigger. And I'm then going to cut it out of my Botanicals Infusible ink sheet. Now this is a design that we would not ordinarily be able to do on the Botanicals sheet. And I'll show you once we've cut it out, just how it would look on a t-shirt if we had to place it on the garment. Now I do need to make sure that this is mirrored when I send it to the Cricut to cut. So I can do this in one of two ways. I can either make sure that it is flipped horizontal now on the canvas, or I can make sure that it is mirrored on the Make It panel. Because we need to turn the page over and place it on the garment, it needs to be mirrored just like normal heat transfer vinyl or normal iron-on. I prefer to mirror the design on the canvas itself, so I'm going to click on Flip in the middle of the screen at the top and flip horizontal, so that when I go to the Make It panel, I don't have to worry about making sure that the mirror function is enabled on each mat. I find this just a little bit easier to do. I'm then going to click Continue and connect to my machine. Once connected, I'm going to choose Infusible ink transfer sheet, as that is what we will be cutting. I've cut this material before on my machine, so I don't need to do test cuts. I'm then going to load up my mat and cut out the Infusible ink sheet. Now I am going to be using my green standard grip mat, so I'm going to remove the protective sheet and take my piece of Botanicals that I'm going to use and stick it onto the mat. This obviously needs to be face up with the shiny side down, because the shiny side is the backing that we need to turn over onto when we're going to be pressing it. So I'm going to load this into the machine, and then we're going to cut it and weed it afterwards and then color it in. Now that that has been cut, I'm going to flip the mat over and remove the Infusible ink from the mat. Put the protective sheeting back on and store it away for later. Now I'm going to cut out the section of Infusible ink that we're wanting to use. And now we can weed our Infusible ink. Now you can just kind of roll it a little bit. You can hear a little bit of the cracking that it makes. And we can then take our weeding tool and remove the Infusible ink backing. Now we can see that if we had to put this onto a white garment, just how bland it would look. you wouldn't really be able to see anything. So by coloring it in, you can really make it stand out. But of course, coloring it in on full solid objects makes it look that much nicer. And I'm also going to show you how we can do this on a coaster to make these coasters look absolutely incredible. Now, of course, I do have several sets of colors, and what I'm going to be doing is trying to use a lot of these colors in my Infusible ink sheet. The markers have a much broader tip than the fine point. Now, this is going to come in handy. Even though they are kind of the neon colors, it will make the colors pop quite a bit, and it'll actually allow you to blend the colors a little bit nicely. So if you do have infusible ink pens that are a little bit dry, this is actually where they really shine, because it allows you to blend the colors a lot nicer. You can also place the top back on and color in the entire thing, and also just to make sure that the infusible ink doesn't go on the edges. So I'm going to start off with just normal coloring on the Infusible inks sheets. Now, as you can see, the markers work quite well. Sometimes they're a little bit dry, like what you would normally have, and you can kind of just employ the same coloring in tactics that you would have for normal coloring in things, where the lighter strokes give you a little bit less ink on the page, and the darker strokes deposit a little bit more ink. Now, I'm not so much focusing on the areas that the Cricut logo is not going to be, but I'm trying to make sure that I'm getting continuous strokes. So as an example, this green one is it seems like it's very dried out, but if you look closely, you can actually see that it's very lightly depositing the color. And that's perfect for what I want in this particular case, because I find the stronger, harsher colors a little bit more tricky to deal with. So when it slowly deposits the color, it means that I can build the color up and get some shading. As you can see, I was very easily able to shade that leaf so that it looks like it's kind of darker in the middle and lighter on the outsides. And here is where I can then go in with a lighter green on the outsides and just add a little bit of highlights to the leaf and really bring that gradient home. Another trick that I also learned is that the markers tend to help wash things out a little bit. So when you go over it with the marker, it looks really strong in the beginning, and maybe you want to try this out on a section that you aren't going to be displaying or that's not going to be seen, but it tends to kind of water down everything, and then you can move things around, it'll move the color around a little bit, which is quite fun. Also works with the yellow marker. You can see there how it kind of picks up some of the darker color and moves it around. So you get a little bit more of it's almost like a watercolor kind of effect. It does make the tip of your infusible ink pen a little bit darker and a little bit black. So I would recommend just keeping something nearby that you can clean it off with, because obviously it's picking up the darker ink and moving it around. And there we have now a beautiful gradient on that side. And then of course we just follow the same process with all of the rest of the greenery and the colors. So now that I'm pretty much done with all of the coloring in, I'm going to remove the outside section and just make sure that I've got all of the sections colored in that I want to actually have on my sheet. Good thing I did that, because I'm missing the eye and some of those things over there. So let's just clean those up quickly. And now that we have that all colored in and all laid out, it's time to warm up our Easy Press and get our material ready. I will be using a Cricut t-shirt, and I'm going to be putting Cricut at the back. So I'm going to pre-press it to remove any moisture or anything. And then I'm going to line up the word Cricut. I'm going to be using one of the pieces of silicone paper that come, or butcher paper that come with the infusible ink sheets. Please don't use wax paper. Wax melts under heat. I'm going to be pressing it at 200 degrees for 60 seconds. Now that that's all done, I'm going to remove the paper and remove off the sheet. Look at how absolutely perfect that came out. Now you can see why I wanted to do this video. It doesn't look as spectacular on the sheet when you're coloring it, but once you've pressed it, it really looks incredible. Okay, it is now a while later and I am finally finished drawing this in. Now as you can see, I kind of followed exactly the same guidelines as what I did with this one, although there's a lot more green in this one, which I absolutely love. So I'm very excited to see how this is going to turn out. So I'm going to take the coaster. Well, I'm actually going to place that down first. I'm going to place the coaster on top of it so that I can kind of make sure that I'm covering everything that I want to cover. I'm now taking my heat tape and I'm going to tape it onto the Infusible ink sheet. Make sure that it doesn't move, because if it moves then you'll get ghosting, which means that it won't look very nice. It'll look like there's a darker image and then a lighter image just next to it. My heat press is just finished warming up, but I do need to get one more thing before we can continue, and that is my Teflon sheets. This is my favorite Teflon sheet to use for this kind of thing. Why do we need Teflon? Good thing that you asked. So with this, you can see that part of the Infusible ink is exposed. Now, what will happen when we turn it upside down and it heats up? All of that Infusible ink is going to go down onto your mat if you don't cover it with something. So it's fine when it's not something that's exposed, but when it's exposed like this, you need to make sure that you have a piece of Teflon sheet or something underneath it. You can use things like cardstock, butcher paper, etc., but those you have to keep reusing and throwing out and getting new ones. With Teflon, this specific Teflon, this brown one, don't know what the difference is between the brown and the white one, but you just wipe it off with alcohol swab and then it's clean. So that's why I prefer using this one, because there's less mess or less wastage. So I'm going to press this one, same as what I did with the other one. Let's use a butcher sheet. So I'm going to use the same piece of butcher paper that I used earlier, and I'm going to start the timer and press for 60 seconds at 200, but I mean you can do 190 or 390 to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Now we remove the heat press, move the page, and we can see the escaped. Ooh! That is even more stunning than I could have thought it would come out as. Now, of course, it's going to be really hot, so please be careful when touching it. Taking off the transfer tape. I'm using my nails, so my fingers aren't actually even touching this at all. So you can see the Infusible ink that got left on the page. Now, I'm going to take one of my alcohol swabs, open it up, and you see how it just comes straight off. So you don't have to worry about it damaging up your next project. And we can now see just how beautiful the end product is. Now compare that to your plain black and white, and it definitely has its place. I absolutely love the black and white, but I love me a pop of color. Can you tell? Now, if you want to know how to layer Infusible inks, check out this video, subscribe for more Cricut tutorials, and remember, be kind to someone today. See you soon.